are some who might still want to glimpse Farmer Giles pushing his creaky wooden wheelbarrow full of turnips to market. Others who might like to see the town barber pulling troublesome teeth. But to those I say, it's time to move on. It's time to save our town from what is becoming a slow death.
This is a short film about how one of this country's many historic towns came under siege and how a small battle was fought for it. Had that battle not been won, our county town would have been devastated for generations, perhaps forever. There are similar stories unfolding in the villages, towns and cities across our country, many of which local people only find out about when it's too late. For me, this story is personal. This town, Guildford in Surrey, in the south of England, is the town I grew up in and where many of the people I care most about in the world are from, and many still live. In early 2019, a new political group calling themselves Residents for Guildford and Villages emerged and fought the local elections in May of that year. They campaigned as independent candidates, but in fact R4GV, as they're known, was registered as a political party before the elections in March 2019. Apparently, even some of their candidates didn't know they were part of a political party, and they probably didn't understand the implications, which would later become clear. R4GV won enough council seats to form a coalition with the Liberal Democrats and took control of the Borough Council. In 2020, R4GV told borough residents that they were on their side. They warned about developers and the importance of avoiding high-rise developments. And then, unbeknown to what appears to have been the vast majority of borough residents, they started working quietly with developers. R4GV councillor John Rigg, a previous employee and director of Savills, the global property business, took charge of the council's regeneration portfolio, and ex-city banker Jonathan Bigmore became council leader. And then in late 2022, they came forward with this huge scheme with Savills, Berkeley Homes and others for Guildford Town Centre. 473 high-rise, high-density properties designed to cram potentially up to 1,500 people into 13 tower blocks up to 13 stories high. A development worth hundreds of millions, which was described as looking like something out of Tower Hamlets in London, and which other residents described as a ghetto and as a 60s-style Soviet housing block. Exactly the sort of threat to our historic county town that R4GV had identified and assured people they were against was in fact exactly what they were trying to impose by pushing it through the planning process. When I found out about it, they were literally just days away from getting it irrevocably approved, and very few people knew anything about it. If you followed my campaign from late December 2022 until the planning meeting to decide the North Street development on January the 11th, you may have visited the website that I set up called guildfordexaminer.com, and you may have seen the series of short videos that I produced examining the scheme, lobbying councillors and identifying the myriad of issues and objections to the scheme from professional bodies, the county council, public transport providers, emergency services and others. R4GV have made lots of promises in the past. They told us they wanted to open up the Riverside, one of Guildford's major attractive natural assets. But then they pushed through a scheme last October to replace the Debenhams building by the river with high-rise blocks. They look more like offices, but it's high-density housing in fact. I didn't find out about that one until it was too late. R4GV and their election partners, Guildford Greenbelt Group, have tried to tell people that housing schemes in the town will relieve pressure for housing in the villages and rural areas of the borough. But this is complete nonsense. The research conducted to establish housing need in Guildford Borough, which is in fact what actually drives housing policy, identified 3-bedroomed houses as the biggest what they call demand group, typically people starting or with young families who want space. Building lots of high-rise schemes in Guildford, Debenhams and North Street are not the only ones, there are more coming down track, would simply draw more people to the area, who in turn, in a few short years, will want 3-bedroomed houses and the like, space in our villages and rural areas. So these schemes will not fulfil existing housing demands, so they'll not relieve pressure, and in fact, if they're allowed to happen, will create more demand and pressure in the future in our villages and rural areas. That's the reality. It's a route to more concrete everywhere.
Guildford deserves better. We urge you to refuse this overly tall application. Most pedestrian areas in the scheme are so enclosed they would typically see only 1 hour of sunlight.
One of the benefits being made was that this scheme would reduce housing pressure on the Greenbelt. That isn't a benefit or a case.
The council's planning meeting provided a moment of high drama. Just a couple of days before, our local MP, Angela Richardson, had intervened and asked the Secretary of State for Housing to review the scheme. He'd responded by saying that the scheme could not receive the final approval until he'd had time to look at it. But the meeting went ahead anyway.
There's been so much last-minute manufactured hysteria and hyperbole.
Not 750 homes, but smaller at 437.
Bigmore and Rigg spoke at the meeting in favour of the scheme, and each of their 5 councillors of the 14-person committee, despite them identifying problems with the scheme, lined up behind their party leader and voted for it.
I have some particular concerns about height.
Ramsey Nagati of the Guildford Greenbelt Group, who are now in an electoral pact with R4GV, also voted for it, and so did the Labour councillor. But
I personally have not heard any of these refer to hyperbole that people allegedly are stating. What do we say to the residents, the teachers, the nurses, the aspiring couples?
Affordable housing used to be sacrosanct to this council, and that's why we have a very strong policy of 40%. To offer us 20 shared ownership, I have to say, is an insult to anybody waiting on our housing needs register.
both of the Conservatives on the committee had made their complete opposition to the scheme abundantly clear during the meeting, and publicly in their borough newsletter, and voted against. And then, despite indications that their leader was in support of a R4GV coalition partner scheme, the 5 Liberal Democrat councillors voted against it. The score was 7 for the scheme and 7 against. And so the entire weight of the final decision all fell on one woman's shoulders.
So I have to make this decision, I'm afraid. It's not one that I ever hoped that I would have to face.
Fiona White, the chairman of the planning committee.
I think it's incredibly important that we actually get the right building on this site, the right development. And therefore I am going to use my casting vote against the application. Thank you.
That was an emotional moment. So does that mean that the final battle for Guildford was won? Unfortunately not. If R4GV achieve their objective and win control of the Borough Council at the local elections on Thursday, May the 4th, then the developer can simply resubmit the application with a minor amendment and R4GV can push it through planning. I'm ashamed to say that in 2019 I voted for R4GV. I will not make the same mistake again, and I hope you will help us avoid the nightmare that would unfold if they're re-elected on May the 4th by carefully considering how you vote and voting for others instead. Simply not voting will not really help. We need to vote for others, not let R4GV win by default. R4GV say they'll put people first, that your voice matters, but the reality is they haven't listened. They haven't consulted people. I put in a Freedom of Information request to the council and discovered that less than 1% of borough residents had been informed by letter or email about the North Street scheme by the council. They haven't done what they promise on the council website or in their strategic framework, and they've told people one thing and then done the exact opposite. If they're elected in May, it's inevitable that the North Street scheme and others will be pushed through, and then the dominant feature of our town, the cobbled high street that has drawn generations from far and wide to visit, will be replaced by another image, a town of tower blocks. And we know from the mistakes of the 60s and 70s that building tower blocks and cramming people into small areas by stacking them on top of each other creates major social problems. We know this, right? So I'll continue campaigning until May the 4th, and if you'd like to follow my campaign and find out more about what's going on, then please visit guildfordexaminer.com and let me have your contact details so I can email you with updates. You can also follow my campaign on social media, but unless you remember to like my posts and happen to look at your feed at times that coincide with these posts, then you may miss them. I have no political objective other than avoiding our town, our villages and our borough being destroyed and trying just to help a little to make it thrive. No one's paying me to do this. I'm covering the cost myself because I'm passionate about the place I grew up, the place I will grow old, and the place where you and your family, I hope, will thrive and be happy. Thanks for watching. The battle continues.